Hi, welcome to our character setup. We're going to be using the Invector third-person controller to animate our characters. We have a character folder that has a number of preset FBX models within it that we need to get moving. Today what we're going to look at is setting up a player controller and eventually adding some ability to fight through punching and kicking, and also some sword play. In order to do this, we need to establish a scene that is pretty much just a blank scene that we can use to demonstrate and set up all our characters on. So this won't be actually part of the game at the moment. What we're going to do is set up the characters and then prefab them once they're set. So I've just created a new scene. So I've gone up to create scene, and I've called it setup, and that's what I'm in at the moment. First thing I want to do, because we want to have characters that can run around, we need something for them to run around on. So we're going to create a terrain, which just gives us a surface for everything to manipulate on. And then what I'm going to do is go into characters, and I'm going to use the challenger for this demonstration. And when we go into our folder, this is the model we need to work with. Note there's no textures on it just yet, and we will certainly set them up in a minute. Right, in order for us to get this character moving, we need to change its rigging. So within the project library, let's select shell rig, and we're going to go up and press rig here. Now the animation type we are going to use is humanoid, and the avatar definition, which is basically the bone structure that's going to be created, is going to create from the actual model itself. So I'm just going to hit apply, and that will apply that, and then I need to configure it. And now, do you want to save the changes made in the scenes? Just hit save, that's fine, because what it does, it just leaves that for a minute and goes into our an actual rigging inspector. So at the moment, here's my character here, and you can see it's placed a bone system into it. Now this bone system is quite detailed. It goes right up into the face, but also goes from hand to hand as well, and right down to the legs. Now it should have already set it all up, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit done, and at that point we should now be able to use this character. Maybe just if I go back in here very quickly, one other little thing that's quite nice to see is that if we zoom in on him, you can test out whether or not he's actually animating properly just by doing these things, rolling in, rolling out. Now what you're actually doing is just manipulating the bone structure. You're not changing it anyway, but you can see that everything sort of moves. Okay, so that's cool. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to hit done, and that's ready to go. Next thing I need, now I'm back in my original setup scene with my terrain. If I click on him now, first thing I see is that without the textures he looks pretty boring. So what I'm going to do is just drag him up into the scene and then zoom in. Now all the textures are in here. If I drop them on, you see they go on pretty nicely. Just be aware there's really three different types of textures that we've got here. I've got one for his head, which is this one over here. I've got one for soft armor and one for hard armor. Now it's pretty hard to sort of see the differences here, but just understand that the Challenger Beto 2 is pretty much from memory all his hard armor, so things like his skirt, his body armor, glaives on his hand, and the other one is all the softer things. So let's just make sure that is right. Looks like it's texturing up right. You can tell by when the straps are actually the right colour. Let's double check this one. That one looks right too. So it's just a matter of having a bit of a look. Now this one here, is a bit patchy. I'd say that one's wrong. That one should be that. That one's that. Oh no, that one's that one. No, maybe I have been doing it the wrong way around. So this one here is actually the hard armor. This is all the soft clothing. So hard armor. His helmet as well will be that one. And you can see I've pretty much got him put together now. I'll just try that one on the boots. That one looks a little bit patchy, so that one's better. And the last thing was actually a sword scabbard around his back there. Now his beard, have a couple of different options here. I can go helmet. Let me just turn that off so I can see his face. Beard, we have options where we can turn that off as well. Now the hair should be this one. It's a little bit patchy. I think we actually need a couple of extra bits on that. And the eyes, hopefully, are this one too. Oh, they're not. Just notice with the eyes. We might be missing a couple of textures, but that's right. What I'll do is I'll just put the white of the eyes in for now, and we can come back and have a look at that later on. Okay, because we've now rigged this character, I'm just going to rename him to Challenger Prefab. Press enter to keep that. Alright, and there's our Challenger Prefab, pretty much ready to go, with a little bit more tweaking needed in a couple of areas, but we can do that a little bit later. He's essentially ready to move now. So I'm just going to go back into my Challenger folder, and what I want to do is grab him and drag him down into the folder, and there he is there, all prefab ready to go. Now I believe this one here is also a prefab, but I'm going to delete it because that's, I think, an old one that I haven't actually used. Okay, yours will be a little bit different. You won't have that one in it. Okay, so there's my prefab now. What I'm going to do is, once I've prefabbed it, and it's definitely there, I can delete it from the scene, because we're going to recreate it now using the controller that we're going to use for movement. Okay, so if everything's set up okay and right on your computer, you should have an Invector drop down at the top. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a melee combat controller, create a melee combat controller here, and within this window we're going to show it what we actually want to use. So the prefab that we created, we're going to drop into there. Now if we've created it right and we've rigged it right, he should appear here as he does on my screen. If he doesn't appear, that means it's not rigged. And remember, we need to go back to this one, go back through your rigging here and make sure he's rigged properly. The controller comes built in, so we just need to tell it we want to use the Invector at Melee Combat version 3. Double click on that. The camera list data, none. Third person camera set, we need to tell it what camera set we want to use. We want to use the Melee Combat at camera state, and the HUD controller is essentially the one that's built in, so it gives us a heads up display for all the controls we're using, plus also the his life and his stamina as well. So we're just going to create that, and you can see now on my game side the characters created, but what I want you to look at more is the actual hierarchy. So what we've done is we've created a third person camera, and it's replaced the main camera. We've created a third person melee, and this is the actual character itself. So let's straight away change this name to Player Challenger so that we understand what it is. We have a game controller. This allows us to set spawn points, spawn retiming, what to do with the body when he dies, okay, and display info and faded text as well. Now we can set this up simply by grabbing our third person character and dragging it into the prefab, and the spawn point at the moment we haven't set, But let's just go ahead and do that. We're going to go into our hierarchy and we're going to create an empty. Just grab it outside of everything, and we're going to call this spawn point. And at the moment this spawn point set at 0, 0, 0. If we look at that by double clicking, this is the spawn point here. So you can see it's actually isn't empty. So let's just say if I create the spawn point at 5, 0, 10. Right, that spawn point set now, and within our game controller I can set it into there. Alright, so if our character dies, we can basically respawn at that point, X and X on the 5 on the X-axis and 10 on the X on the Y. Say that again. 5 on the X-axis, 10 on the Y-axis. So it's going to be up in this area somewhere, and it's going to happen after 4 seconds. And of course, we want to destroy the body after dead as well, so it disappears. Okay, so with this Challenger prefab now having some motion, we could test that. So I'm just going to drag it away from that corner, and if I hit play, okay, here's my third person camera, and I should have the ability to run using the WASD keys as we've defined. We can jump, we can change the camera view so it goes into a over the shoulder camera view by pressing C. Notice as well when we do that, he's actually crouched now. A little bit hard to show you, but you can see he's crouched down now. Okay, and because we've created a melee controller, he already comes with some fighting moves. So he's got 3 moves, 3 click moves. So 1, 2, punch, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, multiple clicks, and he kicks as well. Okay. So what we need to do is basically get this character up to this point. Once we're here, if I come out of the game mode, we now have a prefab that is the actual character itself. But what we need to do now is create a prefab that is the Invector player. Now the reason we need to do that is because within the character itself we have created a whole heap of new components that allow us to actually control the character and also set up some fighting movements as well. Okay, so this tutorial is pretty much done. The last thing I want everyone to do is within our character set, let's create a new folder, and what we're going to call this folder is prefab game ready. A little bit long-winded, but prefab game ready, and we'll go into that. And once we create these characters with the Invector controllers on them, we're going to prefab them as well. Okay, so when we go to build our game and all our different levels, these characters then are ready to work. And if I just assume now that I've got a brand new level here where I haven't got any characters in, I can just drag that straight up onto there, hit the play button, and I'm up and running. Okay, just like when you guys create new scenes. So if I just save this one for now, if I was to go back and create a new scene, and of course if I spent time building it all out and all that sort of thing, right, here's a brand new scene. I haven't got anything in it, but I have my prefab character here. He's pretty much ready to go at that point. The only thing I'm really missing are the cameras. So if I just play this, just to show you, there you can go, the actual character's all moving on a new scene. What we also need to do for us to be able to do this, sorry, if I just go back to my original scene now, setup scene. I'm not going to worry about saving that one. My prefab game ready. A couple other things we need as well. Camera. In fact, what we'll do is this. We're going to go create empty, and we're going to go game components, and I'm going to drop all of these elements. So everything apart from the actual player itself and the directional light, I'm going to move into this folder here. Now, the reason I want to do this is these are all the components I need when I start a new scene. So I'm going to prefab that, and that's it there. So there's now my game components. So if I was to go back and start a new scene, I'll just save that, create a terrain. In order for me to get all this working, delete off that camera, pull this prefab in. Now I've got cameras and everything set up in here, and then I can drop my player on. Now the only thing I need to check is that my camera is still looking at that player, and you can see this here, third person camera, target. I just need to make sure it understands that I want to target that third person player. Okay, and there we go. So this is that brand new scene now, using all those elements I created in my other scene. I can very quickly get up and running in a brand new level if I'm starting a new level. Okay, so hopefully that enables you to get the player up and running. The next tutorial is going to start to look at how we actually add some weapons to this character.